right. Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our session for today. Let me share my screen and you'll be able to see what we are going to present you in this session. All right, I hope you can all see my screen. And welcome to the Unveiling Human Rights in Seed Supply Chain session. And it's about our internal journey that we have been experiencing here in Bayer. And in this session, we present you the challenges, lessons learned, and best practices in Bayer's due diligence effort to respect human rights in the seed supply chain. We share a case study of multi-faceted, multi-stakeholder business and highlight key human rights considerations for particularly complex industry. And it aims to inspire, of course, the change and empower people to join this session. My name's Leonard. I'm part of the Procurement Sustainability team at Bayer, and I'm very happy to present you today a session on Bayer status quo in that topic, and some seed challenges that you will see in that category. Also, it's about measures and a call for action. And we will have later on time for Q&A. So please make use of the chat functionality in the very chat. And then we will come to that after the presentation of this session. I'm also very happy to have several speakers here on board. And we have with us today Janina Lukas. She's the Bayer's head of ethics and social impact and part of the sustainability function. She's leading the Bayer's group-wide human rights program in close collaboration with our divisions and the relevant functions, such as procurement. We also have with us Bruno Abreu. He is Bayer's Global Seed Growers Procurement Director, and with more than 18 years of experience in different geographies and organizations and businesses. Over the last years, Bruno has been focusing on his passion and career regarding ethical and sustainable sourcing topics. And we have Correa with us. She is the Bayer's Human Rights Procurement Lead and part of the Procurement Sustainability team. She's been working the last 3 years on embedding human rights into procurement strategies, processes, and also systems. So welcome very much to the three of you. And before we get started, just some formalities. So the session will be recorded, and we encourage your interaction and questions. So again, please make use of the chat functionality on the right-hand side. I will have an eye on that. And later on during the Q&A, we will tap into your questions and comments. Also spread the word, of course, using the hashtag collaborate to accelerate in your LinkedIn posts. And together with you, we are building a strong community of 1 million. So a network where we are changing the procurement profession. We want to connect with each other via chat on our SPP Ambassador LinkedIn page and also via our official registration. So stay tuned and let's get on with this very session. I will hand it over to Vicky and she will talk about the Bayer status quo. So give you an introduction and then we will look into human rights strategy, the ABC of procurement, sustainability. All right, Vicky, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Leo. So hello, everyone. My name is Victoria. So I will present you the introduction of Bayer, our company. So Bayer is a life science company with 3 core business divisions. We have the crop science division, focusing on innovative crop protection, seed and traits, digital technologies and services. Then we have the pharmaceutical divisions with prescription products for cardiology, women's healthcare, oncology, hematology, radiology, and other areas. And we have then the consumer health division, which is the non-prescription medicine in the categories like dermatology, nutritional supplements, pain, and cardiovascular risk protection, among other areas. We are present in 80 countries all over the world, and we have more than 97,000 of employees globally. What about Bayer Procurement? So procurement belongs to the Enabling Functions organization. They are the functions that are supporting the business operation. We have last year in 2023, 23 billions of euros spent annually. We have 86,000 of direct suppliers in our baseline, and we source from 147 countries worldwide. However, we try to be always very sustainable, and we purchase 77% of our spend from local procurement. All the divisions and all procurement is working for the overall Bayer mission for health for all and hunger for none. So now I hand over to Janina Lukas, who will introduce and present to you our commitments to human rights and our corporate strategy.
Thank you very much, Vicky. And as Vicky just closed, our mission is health for all, hunger for none. And by that, we are addressing already two of the most fundamental human rights, namely the right to health and the right to food. We really pledge to serve the customers around us, the patients, the farmers, and all who are linked to our products and services. But you also have seen that we have thousands of employees and even more employees of the suppliers in our supply chain. So we are not only serving human rights to the customers around us, but also stand up for the rights of our own colleagues, but also for the people in our supply chain. And how we're doing that? By leaning to international acknowledged standards. Since more than 2 decades, Bayer is focusing on respecting human rights as grounded in the UN Global Compact, but also on the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. We had some experiences in implementing those activities voluntarily, but are also now more and more confronted with legislations who are building on this international standards and turning this voluntary commitment to human rights into a hard law. And this is also what we at Bayer are confronted with, but we are taking this as a chance to really strengthen our efforts and our processes. And also we use that this legal legislations, for example, the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, to also have a fresh look on our efforts in the seed supply chain, where we are talking about today. And how this looks like, you can see on the next slide. So these international conventions are more or less, you can transform it into 3 buckets: the governance, the due diligence, and the report in the end. The governance structure as Bayer is embedded across all hierarchies. We have steady relationships with our board of management, and we have, for example, also a dedicated human rights officer in place that is directly reporting to the board of management about all our human rights efforts. If you like, you can read about our human rights due diligence efforts and activities we've been doing in multiple means, such as our sustainability report or also on our website. This is what you can see below. But honestly, in the core of what we are doing is the annual due diligence cycle that is covering risk analysis, preventive measures in case we are identifying a risk, but also stand up and remediate in case we are seeing certain issues occurring. You see also some selected means how we are bringing this theoretical due diligence cycle alive. We have a human rights policy in place for all of us. You can also have a look on this on our website, where we are clearly speaking up and position ourselves towards human rights. We have trainings, for example, for our employees to train and raise awareness about human rights, but we have also dedicated means, such as the Supplier Code of Conduct, that is translating our human rights commitment to our work when we are engaging with suppliers. And more to that, over to Vicky.
So Janina was talking about the human rights due diligence, and procurement has a lot to contribute to this due diligence. We have a very clear goal when it comes to human rights in bioprocurement, which is to respect human rights in our supply chain. And what you see over here is our ABC of Sustainability Foundation. It's inspired by the recent regulations like the German Supply Chain Act. And you can see that it's a set of measures that we do in procurement in order to secure respecting human rights in the supply chain. First of all, we start with a risk analysis, because what we need to do is first identify where are those areas with high potential risks in human rights, but also in sustainability overall. And we do this for our tier 1 suppliers, looking at the country risk as well as the procurement category risk. We also do deep dives and ad hoc analysis for specific raw materials or supply chains. Once you know where are the major risks, it's time to take action. So prevention and mitigation comes as a second step. So we have a set of measures to minimize and prevent those potential risks. And Janina was already talking about the buyer-supplier code of conduct. There is where we have all our standards and clear expectations to do business with buyer written, and we embed this code of conduct in our supplier contract. This is also part of our first step of the 4-step management process. We call it like this. So to generate the awareness of our sustainability standards, where of course it's a mix of human rights, environmental, ethical principles. Then what we do as a second and third step is selecting suppliers and verifying what's going on, what is actually going on there. So we measure our sustainability performance of suppliers by doing audits as online assessment of different methodologies. Sometimes we observe that our suppliers maybe do not have the performance in sustainability that we wish, and we also work with them together to develop. That is the last step, the supplier sustainability development. We also do trainings. We train our own organization, we train suppliers, and we also embedded sustainability and, of course, human rights in our sourcing processes. So whenever we do a sourcing event, sustainability has to be considered. We also start to strengthen our category strategies by embedding social responsible purchasing practices. Then we have the grievance mechanism. That's not led by procurement, that's led by our compliance and legal department, but we are highly connected because it's a mechanism to address concerns, either from internal, from buyer employees, also from external parties. So everybody can address if something is not going well with our procurement, our supply chain, our suppliers. That is the buyer compliance hotline. And procurement, of course, is highly connected because if something is related to our supply chain, we take in and take proper actions. The last pillar is the remedy. It's all these action and measures to prevent and minimize imminent violations or harms. So as I said, when you are working with your partners, you might encounter things that are not going well. The most important thing is how to apply proper actions immediately. We have the buyer sustainability supplier development program, which is just a set of process and measures to develop action plans, to develop development and corrective actions to the suppliers, with the suppliers, so working together in order to develop them. Very important is also to work together with many companies. So one company alone can create impact, of course, and we all should be responsible. However, it's when we multiply the effect by working together with other companies that then the effect is even higher. So we are part of initiatives and we are members of many institutions. You can see the SPP, you can see also the Pharmaceuticals Supply Chain Initiative, and Together for Sustainability, among other membership that we have. So this is our ABC. This is what we do in procurement sustainability and for human rights. And we can see now very soon, when I hand over to Bruno, that this ABC might not apply always. So seed business is a very challenging business. We will learn very soon what are those challenges. And there might be some measures that has to be taken in particular to this business. So I hand over now to Bruno.
Thank you very much, Vicky. And I have two challenges here. I need to introduce you about the seed business. And it's really inspiring and it's really exciting. And I hope you can learn a little bit about the challenge we face. And of course, the second challenge I have is to make sure that I cover everything within the few minutes I have during the presentation. So as Vicky just shared with us, we have the ABC for procurement sustainability. We know the methodology, we know the concept, we have some tools that will be applied to our suppliers. And I'm pretty convinced that most of the companies here in this presentation, they are following some similar opportunities or similar process or similar systems with your suppliers. Basically, this is what we can do, especially when you consider business to business relationships. However, business to business is not really applicable when you think about the seed business, because in the seed business here, we are working with farmers, we are working with villages, we are working with small companies. So the challenges we have, the way we reach, the way we audit, the way we share our commitments is a little bit different. And of course, I'll be sharing with you some insights of that. But before talking about that, it's better to visualize. So I would like to ask the team to show a video that will highlight a little bit about some specific and particular type of suppliers we have, the smallholder farmers across the globe.
This is Rosalia. She's a tech enthusiast, a pioneer, and a farmer. She's seen the difference innovation can make. She's held the results in her hands, and she's not alone. When farmers like Rosalia gain access to modern products, digital tools, financing, and markets, their incomes grow and their impact on the environment shrinks. And that's important because they provide food to highly populated, food-insecure regions. There's something about farming that brings out the best in us. When you shake hands with a smallholder farmer, you can feel their connection to the earth. Tomorrow's agriculture needs that practical wisdom and innovative technologies. What if the two work together? At Bayer, we know it's not only possible, it's already happening. We've shaken hands with countless smallholders, and we've committed to becoming their partner. In doing so, we've transformed our business. We've committed to advancing resilient seeds that enrich local food culture, and we're doing it faster than ever. We've committed to connecting farmers to the agricultural value chain and working with partners to build ecosystems that make solutions available sooner so farmers don't have to wait for sustainable incomes. And we've committed to developing digital tools and tailoring them to the local needs of farming families. All of this work is aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. When already resilient farmers have the support to improve their livelihoods, they can make positive change in their communities for generations. To date, we've supported tens of millions of smallholder farmers through these efforts, and we have our sights set on 100 million by the year 2030. Our goal is that more farmers like Rosalia gain access to the inputs and technologies they need to become economically and environmentally sustainable. Because their farms may be small, but their work impacts all of us.
Well, I hope the connection allowed you to follow the video. I have to tell that my connection here was not perfect, but I know this video. And if we can go back to the slide, I would like to share some numbers or some highlights on our seed business footprint. One slide back, please. Yes. So considering the production model we have in place, Bayer does not own land. So we need to go to the market. We need to go to farmers, and we have a relationship with those farmers. And they will provide land, they will provide water, and we will provide field inputs. We will provide our genetic seed, and we will combine work together to produce and to multiply our seeds, because we want our genetic seeds to reach commercial volume. So this is the intention of our production. Considering our production model, we can be named as the largest seed production or the biggest farmer in the world, because we are producing in more than 630,000 hectares across the globe. And considering our production models, we reach more than 30 countries. We are producing with more than 60,000 growers. So as you can imagine, this is a huge supplier database, and it brings a lot of challenge for us. Also, if you think about agriculture, we are producing across the globe. We have more than 20 crops for vegetables and fruits, and we have, of course, more than 6 crops for row crops: corn, soy, cotton, canola, rice, and wheat. So we have different challenge in terms of producing our seeds across the globe in different environments, in different geographies. So of course, the way we interact with those suppliers, the way we interact with those small companies, the way we interact with those growers is completely different. And the ABC that we just learned from Victoria is not really applicable there. So if we can go ahead, one more slide. I would like to go deep in the particularities and the challenge that we have in our supplier database, in our supplier relationship, but especially in our seed business. And I can say that we have 2 different dynamics. The first one is related to the external and the industry dynamics. The second one is more related to the internal and production operations dynamics. If you think about the external market, the industry market, of course, we have a very specific and unique supplier profile. We are talking about farmers. We are talking about families. We are talking about villages. We are talking about small business. We are not talking about big companies. And just to give you a very clear example, in a lot of cases, they do not have emails. So how can you communicate with those farmers? How can you engage? How can you invite them to join an assessment through an online platform? They don't have access. They only speak local language. They do not speak English. They do not speak any other language. So this is a challenge for us. And you also need to consider that we are in a business that really impacts food security and, of course, communities' livelihood. So it's pretty much important to keep human rights as a very critical point for us. Finally, we need to recognize that the agriculture in general is a high exposure business because of the practices, because of the heat stress, because of the open fields, because of all the practices we have in our productions, not only in Bayer, but in general, the industry, the challenge on the agriculture business in general. Of course, the geographic dispersion we have is also a challenge because we need to adapt, we need to adjust to such different local requirements, legislations, and we need to follow all the local requirements, of course. And finally, there is a very interesting dynamic between the local and global mindsets and the rural and urban mindsets. If you think about the internal and production operations dynamics, of course, we are talking about open fields with a lot of manual and mechanical work. So this is a hot topic for human rights. Also, as I mentioned to you, we have a huge number of suppliers. We have a huge number of growers. This is a different type of challenge for us. Also, considering that, as you can imagine, procurement cannot be interacting with those 60K suppliers or 60K growers across the globe. So we empower product supply to be the face of Bayer. So they are monitoring the field. They are helping the production. We are co-responsible in the production as well. So we need product supply to be there, to be present. So it's not only procurement, it's not only sustainability, it's not only human rights, but it's also a lot of people from product supply. So a lot of internal stakeholders interacting with our growers. As I mentioned, we share responsibilities in the production. It's just not something like you ask your supplier to provide you a product at that price when you need. I mean, we are there producing with them. We are responsible for field inputs. We are responsible for field services. So we share that responsibility. And of course, as you can imagine, there is like a dual perspective because farmers, they are our suppliers, but they are also potentially our customers. So they are pretty much important for the supply chain perspective, but they are pretty much important for our commercial perspective as well. So the way we interact with them is pretty much critical for everybody at Bayer. So considering all these challenges, of course, we understood that we need to take different actions when we approach our seed suppliers. related to human rights. So I'm going to ask to move forward one more slide. And now the idea is to share a little bit about the measures we are taking, the actions we are implementing, but it's pretty much important to say that this is a long journey. Talking about human rights is a long journey, and we are right in the beginning, right? So everything that we will be sharing here is still ongoing, and hopefully we will have your contributions as well, and we count on you to help us in this journey. So if we can move one more slide ahead. So here, when everything started. So in 2022, we created like a task force, bringing people from different organizations. And it's pretty much important to reinforce that it's not human rights, it's not procurement, it's everybody. Human rights needs to be a full commitment of the organization. So we created this task force with legal, sustainability, human rights, procurement, all the divisions inside procurement, all the business and all the interactions. So basically, we were trying to understand what are the actions we have, what are the risks we have, and what we need to be implementing to really mitigate those risks. So we created this task force in 2022. And as Janina mentioned, we have some regulations that we need to comply with. So January 1st, 2023, went live the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act. And of course, this is a big milestone for us. And after the implementation of the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, our focus right now is to really create a culture of human rights. Of course, focusing on compliance and continuous improvement, but also mitigating the risks. And of course, engaging with our industry peers, because we understand that it's not only our challenge to talk about human rights in the seed business. So we are interacting with our competitors, we are interacting with different organizations to also leverage the work that we are doing at Bayer and maybe join force and create something or create standards or create systems or create protocols that could be used across the industry. And of course, the idea is to better position everything that we are doing. So now I would like to invite Janina to briefly talk about some actions that we are implementing from the human rights perspective.
Super. And let me share how we started that. So, and you can remain on the other slide, Leo, if you want for some minutes. So when the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act had been announced, that was in 2021. So we started, as Bruno said, in 2022 to use it as an opportunity to look on our efforts, activities that are in place from human rights overall, but also for human rights and procurement in specific. And we started to look on what are the commonalities, where do we have common approaches, where can we join forces and internally leverage what we know already. We have since also close to 20 years programs in place that is tackling child labor risk, for example, in the seed supply chain in countries such as India, Philippines, and Bangladesh. So we've been very much closely working with the colleagues who had been really thought leaders in this field, learning what they are doing, how they are connected, to see how can we use this knowledge, this people, this resources to build a company-wide approach. And the same we did also with the Procurement ABC Vicky was introducing to look. We have already a risk analysis in place. We have already concepts such as category strategies in place. Where can we plug in the human rights perspective for seeds where needed? So this was the first what we did. We did a mapping on the efforts that we are needing from the law, and also looking on what is in place and where are we already maybe done, and where do we need to strengthen our efforts. And this started with the governance structure. Whom do we need? Who needs to be part of the discussion? Who are the key enablers internally and externally? And the colleagues are still there and working day in and day out on bringing the human rights efforts alive. One thing that I realized is that our risk assessment we are having so far is for the seeds not granular enough. So what did we do? We went a step further. We not only looked general on what is the potential human rights risk for a seed such as cotton as such, but we've been looking on the operations. So how is this type of seed operated in each and every country of the world? Because this also differs very much. You may be confronted with processes that are heavily done by hands. You are seeing sometimes operations that are huge fields where there is a lot of machinery work involved. So we use that in-depth assessment to look on where are the crops in our supply chain worldwide, and what is the operation linked to that, to really understand the particular human rights risk. And these differ. We have in some countries identified a higher exposure to child labor risks for certain crops, and in others we have exposed more risks that are linked maybe to unequal treatment, as we may have a lot of migrant workers working on the fields. We have also common risks, such as risk to health and heat stress related risk, as climate change is not a particular topic to one country, but unfortunately every one of us is impacted. So we went this step deeper and to really understand what is the particular risk in the countries, to be able to then derive much more targeted measures, such as targeted training and awareness sessions, but also such as how do we monitor, how do we audit the situations on the fields. And we developed a blend of on-site visits by trained experts, but also teaming up very closely with our field operations and colleagues, our technicians who are anyhow in the fields to check quality of the seeds, for example, empowering them so that they check at the same time topics such as safety, water access, and so on and so forth. So we've been looking, what do we have? We really wanted to avoid to build something completely in parallel, but rather use the resources we are having, empowering them, and start an integrated approach under one governance. So this is what we've been mainly facilitating also through our sustainability function. However, as you heard, I think very clearly, it's a really cross-company wide effort. And more actions to come in the supply chain, Bruno will elaborate a bit on.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's pretty much important to reinforce that it's not really black or white. Human rights procurement, it's really a collaboration between all the organizations within Bayer. So if you think about more procurement side, we are having some industry exchange with our peers. And the idea, as I told you, is to really leverage what we are doing internally in Bayer, learning from the different experience, learning what they are doing in different organizations, and maybe summing up force together. Thinking about sourcing strategy or sourcing execution, because it's procurement, right? So we have included terms and conditions, all the templates we manage, all the contracts we manage with our seed suppliers. They always have a mention to the sustainability clause and also the supplier code of conduct. Especially the supplier code of conduct, the SCOC, mentions the expectation Bayer has with their suppliers. Also seed suppliers, right? So we talk about human rights, but we talk about safety, we talk about sustainability. And this is a way to bring or to invite our suppliers to join Bayer in those commitments. We also, as you can imagine, we have farmers, but we also have in field case some traditional suppliers. So in that case, when we have traditional seed suppliers, we have, of course, requests for information, requests for proposals. So we have included human rights as a criteria of selection when it's applicable. Of course, it's not applicable for the seed growers or the seed farmers, but it's really applicable for tollers or external partners that also help us in the production. And finally, we included human rights in our sourcing strategy. So human rights should always be a criteria, just like price, just like resilience, or just like anything else that we consider in procurement. So human rights is critical for us. And in our document, in our category strategy, we mention a lot about the contributions that human rights can have to our seed business. Of course, we just mentioned high level what we are doing. This is a long journey. And just to close this journey, I will invite Vicky to come back to the stage.
Thanks, Bruno. So this is kind of the last part of the presentation, is the call for action. So we mentioned that Bayer has a great mission to accomplish: health for all and hunger for none. And it's equally important for us to do it in a responsible way. So we invite you to join us in the challenge to improve human rights in the seed supply chain. We believe that this is the union of many companies and industries working together who can really make the difference and contribute to change and improve the standards of a certain business area or industry. So now you know who we are. You know where to find us. We are very eager to partner with you and to join this great challenge of human rights and the seed supply chain. So hope you learn a lot, that you also feel full empowered after this session. And I think that now we have time for questions and answers. So I hand over back to Leo.
Thank you very much, Vicky, and for closing this presentation now here. Was a great deal of information, and I think the audience is eager then to now shoot their questions to you. So let me stop presenting here for a moment so that we can all see the speakers. Maybe starting with a comment. First, the session was really appreciated and the work. So congrats to you in such a nebulous environment. This work is really appreciated, and also the video that you showed, the people really liked. There is one comment more on a general level. When we go back to the ABC of procurement and human rights practices, how does Bayer actually perform the risk analysis? Are you able to look at tangible activity by your suppliers? Maybe Vicky, you can take that one.
Yeah, sure. I can take that. And maybe Bruno and Janina can add the part for the seeds risks. So in general, in our risk analysis, we start a little bit theoretical. We start analyzing each industry, so each category that we have and where the supplier is located. And we start to see this as a purely theoretical risk. So what are the potential risks based on what we know in each industry? What are the issues on child labor and forced labor, on working conditions? But then when we do the other steps of our due diligence, we also start to look what are the suppliers actually doing. So we go into what are these tangible measures and actions that they are taking. First, we start on an online assessment. So having a look if they have a policy, if they are measuring human rights issues, if they are also fostering these standards through the supply chain. So it's very important not just to, of course, analyze this from a theoretical perspective. It's very important to start also screening what are they doing and their tangible actions. And this is part of, let's say, going step by step. So we have more than 86,000 of suppliers. We need, of course, to prioritize, but it's very important to just not stay on a theoretical risk, but also goes into these tangible actions that the suppliers are taking and how the suppliers are performing.
And maybe if I can jump here just to bring some colors on the seed business. We understand that the risk assessment we have for traditional suppliers is pretty well mature, but it's not really applicable for our seed business. So what we did, we enhanced it. We brought some sophistication to the methodology, and we consider it basically two big variables. The first one is the country where we are operating, because we can have some data to really help us on identifying different risks in terms of institutional framework, in terms of labor market, in terms of practices implemented, comparing all the countries. So because of that, we can somehow say that the risk in country A is higher than risk in country B. So this is one parameter, the country where we are operating. The second criteria that we are using is basically the business that we are operating. So basically, for each type of crop, for each type of production we engaged with our product supply experts, and we try to define a different risk assessment on the business. So because of that, we can understand that crop A has a higher risk than crop B because there is more labor, it's more labor intensive, or because we are using open fields, or because we are producing with smallholder farmers. So because of that, we can also differentiate within our production model. So when we combine country plus crop or business, finally we can better identify and we can better prioritize our seed suppliers in terms of exposures and risks, and of course the actions we need to take considering this prioritization.
Right. And maybe because the audience is eager to know more and get real life examples, maybe could you elaborate a little bit more on what would be a typical finding in an audit, and how do we address those? Just to give an example that the audience could, follow, and how those things actually are happening when talking to growers, maybe, or even in other areas, if that's more better to explain.
Yeah, and maybe I can start, and Bruno, Vicky, as always, please come in. So a very tangible example, let me bring an example of our childcare program we are having in place, for example, in India. Before a season is starting, Bayer colleagues in India, local colleagues, are connecting with all farmers that are working in a season for Bayer to create, first of all, awareness about the particular highest risk. For example, safety topics, but also still child labor topics. And during these awareness sessions, it is clearly laid out that we have that we do not tolerate child labor at all, and we're explaining them what constitutes child labor from our perspective. So every kid below the age of 15 that should go to school and not in the holiday season is considered a child under the Bayer frame. And it's also at that time when the contracts are negotiated, where there is a clear clause in that it says we have a staggered approach about 2 incentives, but also sanctions in case we are identifying children, for example. It's a 3-step approach. One is that directly, in case a potential minor is observed at the field, the person is directly removed from it. What is following then, there is a check followed by looking for, is there something like an ID? Not everyone has an ID in all countries of the world, but sometimes you have some ID linked to school certificates. Sometimes you have a birth certificate. It really depends on where you are. So it's checked if this person is really a minor or not. And in case it is, there is first a warning addressed to the parents, but also to the grower directly. This happens on a personal level, as we not only want to remove, but take time to explain why we don't believe this is a good idea and offering alternatives. In case, and then a grower is marked on a list that we are visiting that grower again. When in the second visit, there is still a child on the field, and even when it's the same child on the field, staggered sanctions are following. And here it's a sanction linked to the negotiated price. And then the third time, in case this happened again, we are also having a part negotiated upfront that we are terminating the contract. This is not really happening so far in the last years. It didn't happen since the last 8 years, if I'm not wrong, that we needed to terminate a contract of it. But we have some warnings, and we are experienced that this is the most effective way to talk with the people, to understand why this is happening, and jointly exploring what could be alternatives in order that kids are rather sent to school instead of going to work.
All right, thank you, Janina. And I think this is a key message that, of course, we always aim to develop our supplies together, and terminating is really a last resort. There is a very interesting question regarding our supplier code of conduct. So we have this as a company, and all our suppliers and CMOs and collaboration organizations, they have to sign it. Question is, how do we enforce it actually? So do we make them sign this piece of document, or do we just bring it to them with the expectation to follow up on it? Maybe Vicky, you can give it a first try to answer that question.
Yeah, maybe I leave this to Bruno, and maybe I can add also.
Okay.
I saw Bruno, you wanted to answer, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to answer, but feel free to
cheers.
jump as well. Basically, we include the supplier code of conduct in all the contracts. So they need to sign the contract. And of course, when they sign the contract, they are also signing and accepting and reading the SCOC. So this is the way that we do. We always attach the code in our contract. By doing that, we make sure that they read, we make sure that they follow, we make sure that they will be in compliance with that.
Maybe to add also on the part of enforcement, and also that applies not just for what Bruno explained to the growers or the seed suppliers. So we embed our sustainability clause and the supplier code of conduct in all the contracts, also with other suppliers. And in some cases, we don't have contracts with the 86,000 of suppliers. We also embed the sustainability clause and the supplier code of conduct in our purchase orders. So to ensure that the supplier code of conduct reaches everyone. And we also offer a training on the supplier code of conduct. It's called the supplier code of conduct guidance, because it's very important not only that the supplier reads and acknowledge that they understand what is the content inside. So that is very important and part of the enforcement. And of course, later on, we will do those checks, we will do those assessments and audits. And of course, this is a very important part to ensure that what is in a written form in a contract is actually in place. That is a very, very important part of the enforcement.
Thank you for answering that question. Now, there is a very interesting case, right? And there's someone in the chat asking, what challenges do you actually see in a program like this, especially looking at the Monsanto India case?
I think the question, but please come in the chat to clarify if wrong. I think you're referring to seed operations in India under the legacy of Monsanto, which we had at the legacy Bayer as well. Before I illustrate a bit about the childcare program, about the staggered sanction regimes, and also how we are identifying cases on potential infringements to our supplier code of conduct, such as child labor, but also safety, working conditions, wages, and so on and so forth. Monsanto had a very similar program in place before the merger and acquisition started. Apparently, it was also called a childcare program. Indeed, in the beginning, it was more like that. It started actually around 2002-03, where this topic on child labor occurred in India on a wide scale. It was not only Bayer and Monsanto, it had been also other seed organizations operating in India. And it was explored how we can tackle it. And many companies started such programs. Now, since 2018, after the merger started, we started to combine these programs and making the best of both worlds in the end. And on top, what we've been doing is, as even Bayer and Monsanto is then now one company, we see there are also so many other seed operations in India ongoing, for example, from Syngenta or BASF. So in order to increase the scale of coverage, we join forces with them, but also with local seed operations, with NGOs together, forming an initiative to jointly, even on a bigger scale, create programs that really are able to address human rights issues at its course. So I hope that answered the question. If not, please let us know in the chat if you had a different example in mind.
Thank you for answering, Janina. I'm looking at the time, and the audience is super passionate and writing a lot of questions. And sorry, we won't be able to provide all the answers, but maybe to close this session with one last question, and it's about following up on the supplier code of conduct. So, do you foresee in the near future the next step will be to request a proof of that, of our suppliers having a code of conduct, and if so, are you using an automatic tool or system to track these documents?
Well, I think it's a very important part to, let's say, might not be the next step, might be an actual step that companies should be also taking, because it's very important to cover the sub-tier suppliers and the tier 2 plus, that also our suppliers have such standards that replicate those standards further down. So basically in our RFX and our questionnaires, when we are screening suppliers, we are asking also that question, if they have their own supplier code of conduct. And in some cases, we are also comparing our supplier code of conducts, because many companies and also many suppliers, they are also having their own supplier code of conduct. So I think it's very important to start doing this, not waiting, let's say, wasting more time, because it's a key angle in order to address all these topics further down and beyond a tier 1 supplier.
Right, looking at the other two speakers, do you have anything to add, or would you like to place a last comment?
No, actually, the only comment I have, I see some challenge in bring automation to this process for growers, especially because, I mean, they do not have email, so this is a different challenge we may have. Considering that we don't have time, and I see other questions in the chat, so we will try to answer those questions, or you can also reach us by email or on LinkedIn, and we will be more than happy to keep this conversation with you. Okay, guys?
Thank you very much, Bruno, and also for the openness. Then I thank you, the speakers, for hosting this session. I thank the audience for really great questions and this interaction at the very end in the Q&A session. And last but not least, I only can say it's just beginning. Pledge for change today by joining the SSP community. You can just go to spp.earth and click on join us, spread the word, of course, and let's build this 1 million community. And with that, thank you very much. It was really a great session, and enjoy the rest of the World Sustainable Procurement Day.